I need to win this presidency. I need something new, something nobody's done yet. Oh, nuclear fusion. But I can't do this alone. Let me call my expert friends.
This dude is cool. It was a great party 2 months ago.
So Liam, I was wondering what nuclear fusion is.
Nuclear fusion. Well, sir, in simple terms, nuclear fusion is a reaction that makes two hydrogen nuclei collide by overcoming Coulomb's force, the force that prevents two positive charges from colliding. Nuclear fusion basically overcomes this force so that these two nuclei can collide and form a new nucleus, usually helium-4. There is also a huge amount of energy produced from this reaction. This is because when the two nuclei collide, the product, helium-4, has less mass than the initial reactants. This missing mass is converted into energy, usually around 9 times 10 to the 13th joules just for 1 gram.
Geez, that's a lot of energy. Sustainability is valued highly by the United States. I have to make sure that the American people will still be able to live the American dream 100 years from now. So Liam, any info on nuclear fusion's sustainability aspect?
Well, sir, nuclear fusion is essentially an entirely green process, and to be honest, the future when it comes to sustainable energy production. It produces an immense amount of energy, as I said before, so much energy that if we were to properly improve the process, it would supply us with enough energy for 30 million years. Also, it produces no radioactive waste and takes up little space compared to fossil fuel plants. It's practically perfect. There's an obvious catch, though.
And?
The process requires an immense amount of heat, 150 million degrees Celsius, just to even get the necessary reaction to happen. Since the process also doesn't exist yet, it would require a lot of funding, funds we don't yet have.
Well, if I become the president. Anyway, how do we put that into reality? Don't even consider funding.
I have a friend at MIT that can help you with that. Here, I'll call him.
Hey, John, I heard you're a brilliant young man. Can you tell me how we can make nuclear fusion a reality?
Well, sir, the end goal is to transform the fuel elements into superhot plasma. The heat emanated by the plasma is then transformed into electric energy by one of 2 methods, either a magnetic confinement reactor or an inertial confinement reactor. Magnetic confinement uses immensely powerful superconducting magnets to surround a donut-shaped ring in which the plasma is placed. A current is then periodically run through the ring, which results in the Lorentz force acting upon the plasma. The stronger the superconductors, the more Lorentz force can be applied to the plasma in order to overcome the Coulombic force that separates the nuclei in the plasma. This would be the most efficient method, but the use of superconducting magnets actually poses a problem. Superconducting materials have a certain temperature range in which they're effective. Clearly, a lot of coolant is required, and the implementation of such coolant would require a large amount of funding to effectively cool the individual magnets. Although, an inertial confinement reactor also shouldn't be in your plans. Those chambers require more input energy to start the process than they actually produce. Please keep in mind that although these methods may not seem perfectly feasible in the short term, they are very promising. Perhaps with more funding, we will be able to implement a nuclear fusion power grid within the next decade.
That is great news, John. What about the environmental aspect? Unlike Republicans, we think global warming is real. All right, let me call my campaign manager and see what he has. Yeah, good work, Greg. Talk to you later. Bye. Hi, Ms. Rohana. As the leader of your environmental activist group, your opinion is very much valued. So please, what's your take on nuclear fusion?
Yes, sir. Please call me Sami. Thank you for inviting me to this call. I'll go straight to the point. Nuclear fuel produces far less carbon dioxide than any other fossil fuel. In this table, you can see that nuclear power produces 25 times less GHG than oil, as it only emits 73 million tons of CO2 for 2,500 terawatt hour, which makes it the greenest power source we have. Moreover, nuclear fuel is so compact that only 2 grams of uranium would fuel 100% of an average British person's energy needs for a day. And finally, although the cost of setting up nuclear power are very expensive, the electricity produced is very cheap because the cost of raw materials we use is not very expensive and the cost of the maintenance is hardly felt.
Thank you, Sammy. Those damn Republicans would tear me into pieces if I don't have everything sorted out already. So who can tell me the implementation of nuclear fusion?
I actually have a friend who's the head of the civil department at UC Berkeley. I should be able to put him on the line.
Yes, John, that would be much appreciated. Hi, Mr. Patel. I was hoping you could tell me how we could implement nuclear fusion in the States.
Well, if you're going to be building a nuclear reactor of any kind, you need to make it earthquake and weatherproof. We can look to the French for advice on this one. The ITER fusion reactor in France has outer walls that are 1.5 meters of solid concrete. The foundations also consist of 1.5 meters of concrete, topped with nearly 500 anti-seismic rods. These rods have layers of steel and rubber on top that absorb ground movement. The floor that is poured on top of these rods is steel-reinforced concrete with 40 millimeter thick rebar. In addition, there's a wall surrounding the reactor itself, which acts as a bioshield to protect the operators. The vacuum vessel that houses the actual fusion reactor is double-layered and made of steel, about 5,000 metric tons of it, in fact. This is all necessary in order to ensure the safety of the plant and the surrounding area.
All right, sounds like a plan. Good work, gentlemen.